Hello and welcome back to another Warlords of Draenor video. So this time round, I'm going to be taking a look at all of the various item levels that will be going on in patch 6.0, with there being so many different raid difficulty levels and then of course many different ways of getting gear outside raiding. I think it would just be good to get everyone up to speed on how this works. So we're going to start off at item level 600. Now 600 is really just the sort of item level that you'll come off right after you're finished leveling and you ding 100. So numerous drops from the Warlords of Draenor rare mobs will be item level 600, and then also some of the Warforged Nagrand gear. Yeah, you heard me right, actually quest gear can essentially get a Warforged proc to be a higher item level. So that's the stuff that will be happening in and around item level 600, though it's an item level that you will get past super quick. Next we've got item level 610. So at 610, there is a free-ish weapon that you get. Essentially, if you get a Bronze Proving Ground medal, then you will get a weapon. So that's really good, and it's going to help you out just initially, because if you're stuck with an old crappy weapon, then you're not going to perform that well. Moving on from that, we've got item level 615, and this is where you're going to find the normal mode dungeon gear. And that really is about it. Of course, in and around here with the 615 and 630, there is gear that you can get from your garrison missions that you send your followers on, so that's also something to take into account. Next though, let's move up to item level 630, and this is really where stuff starts to get interesting. So, first of all, this is where you get the level 1 Apexis Shard gear. This is stuff I've already talked about on the channel. It costs between 3 and 5,000 Apexis Shards, and yeah, it's item level 630. This initial level is pretty cheap, and I'd recommend using this just to kind of patch in some of the sets, or not sets, some of the slots that you may not have. The next thing at item level 630 is the first level of the crafted weapons. Now these are epic weapons, they're item level 630, and in general they are quite good. Notice though that I say level 1, these can be upgraded beyond their first level by people with the engineering or blacksmithing profession. So that's pretty nice, though initially they are 630. What's interesting as well is these actually have got a level requirement of 91, so it might be worth just, you know, building one of these things and sending it to one of your alts so that you could be leveling up Draenor with a really powerful weapon. Next at 630 we have got the heroic dungeon gear. This stuff drops, you know, frequently enough, it's pretty much what you'd expect. However, the big difference is that Warforged gear is a thing for dungeons. You can actually get Warforged heroic dungeon gear that is item level 638. 638 is only 2 item levels below LFR gear, for High Maul anyway, which is, well, it's pretty impressive. You're actually going to have quite a reason to go into those heroic dungeons come Warlords of Draenor. Next though, we've got item level 640, so here you're going to find High Maul LFR gear. So that's pretty nice, if you know, LFR is your thing. Also here you will find the level 1 crafted armor. Notice that the crafted weapon initially starts off a bit worse than the armor. I think that's because weapons generally are very powerful in comparison to a bit of armor. Also, the second level of your crafted weapon will be item level 640, so that's essentially when you get the 631 and apply an item to it that increases its item level. That item is created via blacksmithing and blacksmithing/engineering, and you do need to have the profession to do it. Also, there is the daily challenge mode reward at item level 640. That's right, you can do challenge modes to get essentially LFR quality gear. I think this is a really nice system, as it means that people who don't particularly enjoy LFR will be able to get decent-ish gear by just, you know, doing challenge modes with their guilds and stuff like that. I hope that with subsequent patches they update the item level of the gear that you get from the challenge modes so that it's still competitive with every patch, because challenge mode content is kind of timeless and that really is decently tricky throughout the whole expansion. So next, let's move up to item level 645. This is where we find the second level of the Apexis Shard gear. Now this is when you get your level 1 630 stuff, and then you trade that in along with a bunch of Apexis Shards to get a bit of gear that's item level 645. Now these cost the initial cost of the item plus about 7 to 11,000 Apexis Shards, so it will take a decent amount of time to farm this stuff up, but since it's item level 645, I can see that many LFR players will actually still grind this stuff out, because technically it will be an improvement over their High Maul stuff, even if it is only a 5 item level improvement. Alright, so next at item level 650, we've got Blackrock Foundry LFR gear. Not really too much to say about that, I suppose. Let's move on to item level 655. Now, there's actually quite a lot here at item level 655. So first of all, High Maul Normal will be eye level 655, which is pretty cool. Also, the level 3 crafted weapons will be eye level 655. This is certainly quite powerful, and I can see a lot of people trying to get that weapon slot via the professions pretty quickly. Also, the second level of the crafted gear is here at item level 655. This stuff is basically just when you get that crafted gear that was 640 that I talked about earlier, and then you apply an item to it, just like with the weapons. That item is created by people with the relevant crafting profession. So yeah, the level 2 stuff for the gear, that's, your armor pieces, not your weapon, is 655. Next, we've got the level 3 Apexis Shard gear. So this is the max level Apexis Shard. This is going to cost the cost of your initial bit of Apexis Shard gear, your level 2 bit of Apexis Shard gear, and then of course there will be an upgrade price of about sort of 15 to 20,000 Apexis Shards, which is extremely expensive. It's going to take a very, very long time and a lot of dailies in order to get this stuff. Well, you can only do one daily a day, but you'll probably have to do 30 days worth of them for one of those bits of gear, which personally is something that I'm not really a big fan of. Anyway, let's move on to item level 665. So this is where we find the Blackrock Foundry normal gear, and it's also where we find the level 3 crafted armor. So what you find is that this crafted armor does cap off at an item level that is 10 higher than the crafted weapon. That is, again, mainly just because eye level for eye level, weapons generally have got a bit more value than, than the actual armor does, because they've got your weapon damage, which is an extremely important statistic. Okay, so let's just cover the other item levels. So at 670, you'll find High Maul Heroic Gear. At 680, you'll find Blackrock Foundry Heroic Gear. Then at item level 685, you'll find High Maul Mythic. And at 695, you will find Blackrock Foundry Mythic. Beyond that, I believe there are 1 or 2 items for the legendary questline. I think the ring actually caps off at 710 or something like that. So yeah, that's really what's going on. I think one of the main things people will be interested in is that the raid item levels kind of, it's 640 for the LFR with High Maul, and then it's 15 more for normal, then it's 15 more again for heroic, and then 15 more for mythic, and then the same pattern applies for Blackrock Foundry. So overall, you will find quite a high level increase, but that's generally what Blizzard go for. The reason for that's because they just want to make it feel rewarding, so that increasing a difficulty level will actually yield gear that is perceptibly better. 5 eye levels is kind of hard to notice, but 15, that's quite a lot to notice. It's the sort of thing that players will be a bit more excited for, I suppose. There are concerns that the eye levels may bloat too much. Blizzard recently said in an interview with Wowhead that they understand that concern, but they're pretty happy with how they're planning the eye level increase throughout Warlords of Draenor. I've also just got 1 or 2 other points to mention for this video. First of all, you can only equip 3 bits of crafted gear. That includes both the weapons and the armor. Now, I think this actually makes a lot of sense. If it wasn't capped, then people would just be grinding out that crafted gear, and someone with a lot of gold could just buy a full set, which would be kinda crappy. In the past, if they've ever allowed you to have a full crafted set of a bit of, or of a level of gear, well, that set's generally been pretty crap. Look at the PvP crafted sets. They're all pretty rubbish. By only allowing people to use 3 bits of crafted gear, they can then increase the power level of each bit of gear, because they know that players won't be able to be completely decked out in them in no time. I think this is a really good way of designing it, and I'm certainly happy that they've done that. Between all the different raid sources, the heroic dungeons, the challenge modes, and then the Apexis Shards and the crafted stuff, I think there really is a nice amount of just, variation that's going on here. Oh, and the garrison mission stuff as well. I suppose the final thing to mention is that all of the gear here that comes from a raid, I think bar the LFR stuff, and then heroic dungeons can be warforged, which will increase its item level by, I think it's either 8 or 10, just, something like that, minor eye level increase. Then they can also proc additional gem sockets, which is very powerful. And finally, they can get tertiary stats. These are things like leech, run speed, I think one of them's indestructibility or something, which means that your weapons can't really get, or your armor doesn't get damaged. Yeah, basically, they're really boring. the tertiary stats, I think they're kind of pointless. Essentially, Blizzard didn't want them to affect balance, so they made them weak to the point where you'd hardly even know they're a thing. Then, as for the idea of there being both Warforged and then the gem sockets, their whole reasoning behind that is that, say if you are grinding out, or maybe you're trying to progress against the final boss of a raid, well, that's going to involve you just kind of clearing up to that final boss anyway, so they want to make sure that they actually reward players by giving a chance for one of these cool things to proc. Personally, I don't know, I think it's going to be pretty messy for guilds, it's going to be a little bit annoying in some cases, and I think that perhaps having the effect of both the gem socket and the warforgedness is just a little bit too much. But I suppose we'll have to see how it pans out once we actually get our hands on the live version of the game. Anyway, so there you go, that's the Warlords of Draenor item levels covered. In the first tier, you basically go from 600, eye level 600 at level 100, right up to 695 if you're fully mythic geared and Blackrock Foundry stuff. But then again, you can always add 8 to that for the Warforged factor. A pretty big increase, but hey, I think it'll be quite fun. That's it for this video. Let me know what you think about the item levels in Warlords of Draenor. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.